On this Christmas Day, Pope Francis condemns religious violence, while Barack and Michelle Obama offer their holiday message. Cot import bans cause economic hardship for African farmers. And an outside-the-box choice for the new 007 could give the James Bond franchise a whole new look. Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent McCorry. This is Africa 54. Pope Francis has delivered his second annual Christmas blessing to thousands of people gathered in St. Peter's Square and many more watching on television around the world. Christmas is one of the holiest days for Christians who on Thursday celebrate the birth of Jesus. The Pope led a solemn Christmas Eve Mass Wednesday night at St. Peter's Basilica, urging Roman Catholics to remember that God's message of peace is stronger than darkness and corruption. Before the Mass, Pope Francis telephoned Christian refugees at a camp in Iraq, conveying a message of hope for a better future. The refugees have fled Islamic State fighters who have persecuted Shia Muslims, Christians, and others in Syria and Iraq. U.S. President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama wished Americans a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Now, we're not going to take too much of your time because today's about family and being together with the ones you love. And luckily for me, that means I get a little help on the weekly address as well.
The holidays at the White House are such a wonderful time of year. We fill the halls with decorations, Christmas trees, and carolers. And this year we invited more than 65,000 people to join us. Our theme was a children's winter wonderland, and Americans young and old had a chance to come together and celebrate the season.
And today, our family will join millions across the country in celebrating the birth of Jesus. The birth not just of a baby in a manger, but the message that has changed the world. To reach out to the sick, the hungry, the troubled, and above all else, to love one another as we would be loved ourselves.
We hope that this holiday season will be a chance for us to live out that message, to bridge our differences and lift up our family, friends, and neighbors, and to reconnect with the values that bind us together.
Well, 2014 has been a difficult year for America in terms of race relations. The deaths of two unarmed African Americans at the hands of white police officers earlier this year ignited racial tensions and led to demonstrations across the United States calling for an end to police brutality and racial profiling. As VOA's Chris Simpkins reports, the cases launched a drive to change a number of law enforcement practices.
Days of racial unrest erupted in Ferguson, Missouri last August following the fatal shooting of unarmed African-American Michael Brown by white police officer Darren Wilson. The teenager's death and the circumstances surrounding it drew angry demonstrations calling for an end to lethal force used by officers against blacks. Brown's mother, Leslie McSpadden, called for justice in her son's case.
Being fair. Arresting this man and making him accountable for his actions.
There was more violence in the predominantly black community after a state grand jury declined to indict Officer Wilson on criminal charges in November.
I do believe he should have been found guilty.
Officer Wilson, who has since resigned from the police force, said he killed Brown because Brown attacked him and he feared for his life. Wilson still faces possible federal civil rights charges and lawsuits.
Just because the grand jury ruled a decision yesterday doesn't mean everything's over.
The shooting of Michael Brown shed light on what many blacks in Ferguson called a long history of police misconduct. Mady Henson gave Ferguson officers diversity training.
You're never going to be completely successful with all because sometimes it is so deep-seated. What you really aim to do is to get that critical mass there so that they start to question their own colleagues.
Public policy expert Elsie Scott says the Ferguson case changed the way people feel about policing.
Ferguson has started a nationwide movement toward police reform and even criminal justice system reform.
Shut down! There were more nationwide protests after a white New York City police officer was not charged in the death of Eric Garner. He died shortly after Officer Daniel Pantaleo used a banned chokehold to arrest him for allegedly selling illegal cigarettes. The incident captured on video led to an extensive retraining program of all New York City police officers with a focus on the appropriate amount of force to use when detaining a suspect.
I can't breathe! I can't breathe! I can't breathe!
Thousands rallied near the Capitol in Washington, calling on Congress to pass laws to combat racial profiling and police discrimination. Civil rights activist Al Sharpton.
We want them to fund the Justice Department having a police division so that we can go to the Justice Department automatically on cases of excessive force and or racial profiling.
In an effort to ease tensions, President Obama established a commission to study issues in policing, including racial bias, use of force, and a proposed program to equip more officers with body cameras. Chris Simpkins, VOA News, Washington.
In Somalia, an African Union peacekeeping base in Mogadishu was attacked Thursday by militants. Witnesses reported gunfire and explosions at the base, which is near the city's airport. The Islamist militant group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the assault. An Al-Shabaab spokesman told Reuters news service that Al-Shabaab fighters forced their way into the base. In a message posted on Twitter, AMISOM says all AMISOM and UN staff are accounted for. In a region choking from dwindling water supplies, Lebanon has long been regarded as one of the few places where there is enough. But in recent years, half the people in the country have faced severe shortages, and the more than 1 million Syrian refugees in Lebanon are hit the worst by the water crisis, making the country's most vulnerable people increasingly impoverished and sick. Heather Maddock reports from the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon.
In these informal refugee camps, there is no shortage of water tanks, but many are empty. Aid organizations deliver free water to families about once every 10 days, but children say that water lasts only a few days.
Sometimes we stay for days without water before they come back.
Refugees often walk several kilometers a day to find enough to drink, and families are constantly scrounging for money to buy deliveries. At this camp, the school principal says water shortages are leading to declining sanitation, making children sick.
What's frustrating is we tell the children to bathe twice a week for their health, but there is no water, and the water we have sometimes causes skin problems.
Lebanon's current water crisis is partially due to a drought last year. Recent aid cuts have also reduced the amount of water that families can buy. Daniel Gorovin leads Oxfam's Syria crisis policy. He warns that providing water to only refugees, excluding Lebanese people, could further complicate the problem.
They can develop their infrastructure and ensure that the services which are provided and the jobs which are created can benefit refugees and poor host communities alike, because we are seeing increased tension between the refugees and host communities across the different countries.
Aid workers also say much of the suffering could be alleviated by repairing old pipes and equipment that leaks about half the available drinking water. Dalia Mikdashi, a public health specialist for Oxfam, says water shortages add to the sense of despair among refugees.
This is a challenge. The challenge with this, since the fact that the resources available are cannot even match what was available before. So how this is also related to the hygiene promotion approach. How can we address this to make sure that people can adapt and not feel that their dignity is being affected?
Khalil, the mother of 7, says dignity is less of a priority than survival.
We are obliged to buy water, and they are saying if we don't want to pay, we should get out.
Khalil also says this foul-smelling sewage pit about 6 meters from the camp has contributed to illnesses. A nearby stream, she adds, doesn't help because the sewage has polluted the water. It's not even clean enough for washing clothes. Heather Murdoch for VOA News, Bekaa Valley, Lebanon.
Well, in East Africa, Kenyan farmers are starting to pull out fields of cat, a leafy green plant chewed as a stimulant in the Horn of Africa and in some Arab states. More countries are banning the import and sale of the plant, and 6 months after a British ban came into effect, Kenyan farmers are finding it hard to grow alternative crops in that part of the country. Mohamed Yusuf reports from Meru, Kenya.
Farmers in central Kenya are struggling to sell the leafy stimulant known as cat or miraa after most European countries banned its import. It is another day on the farm for this teenager as he picks cat leaves for local consumption. Hilary Kiriangi says he's fearful for his future as his family struggles to find a market for their produce.
Even though I'm a student, my community's economy will suffer, and someone like me, I will not get school fees and a good life.
Hezekiah Kariange has been a cat farmer for more than 30 years. He says he's feeling the pinch of the ban.
Since they said we cannot export cot, my business has gone down. Whatever I was getting from the cot before, I cannot get it anymore. The issue has been politicized. Cot is not a drug. It is like any other crop.
The World Health Organization classifies cot as a drug of abuse because it can produce mild to moderate psychological dependence. But Kenyans and those living in neighboring countries, especially in the Horn of Africa, disagree. Cot is banned in most European countries and the United States and Canada. Before the ban, cart traders exported about 60 tons of the leafy stimulant to the Netherlands and Britain weekly. Politician Mithika Linturi says the ban has not been fair to his community and he is asking the ban be lifted.
If they are honest, if they are genuine, that they can give us notice and tell us we will not accept your miraa in another 5 or 10 years. That way, people won't be able to get into other income-generating activities and prepare themselves for that eventuality. But this sudden ban is really hurting our community. We feel it, we are very desperate, and the situation is really bad.
Critics and some government officials have called for those communities dependent on cart to grow other crops. But farmers are finding it hard to leave what they have grown for centuries. Mohamed Yusuf for VOA News, Meru, Central Kenya.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, now the West African Ebola outbreak, how the virus horrified the world in 2014. Stay with us.
Happy holidays.
From VOA.
VOA의 পক্ষ থেকে শুভ নববর্ষ।
Happy holidays from VOA.
Chúc Tết năm mới từ VOA.
Happy holidays from VOA. VOA की जानिब से नया साल मुबारक।
Happy holidays from all of us here at VOA.
Welcome back. In 2014, the Ebola virus erupted in West Africa. The epidemic remains a humanitarian crisis of epic proportion. As VOA's Carol Pearson reports, more than 18,000 people contracted the virus, and it has killed more than 7,000.
It began in rural Guinea in the last days of 2013. The Ebola virus then raged through Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. It made forays into Nigeria and Mali, killing doctors and caregivers, and more than a third of those infected with the virus. In its wake, Ebola left behind thousands of orphans. Never before was there an Ebola epidemic like this one. Dr. Tom Kenyon heads the Center for Global Health at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC. He says outbreaks in other parts of Africa have been much more easily contained.
The local public knows it's Ebola and takes measures to stop it. They stop touching sick people. They stop touching dead bodies and bury them safely. They wash their hands and with bleach solutions and don't touch one another. That will stop the outbreak.
But in West Africa, even doctors were caught off guard. Dr. Leisha Nolan is a disease detective at the CDC. She says wars left people fearful of outsiders and unwilling to work with them or to change practices that spread the disease.
There's lots of belief that it's a curse, that a witch came and caused these things to happen to people.
Unlike the remote areas of Central Africa, in West Africa, people travel freely between countries and from rural areas to populated cities. It makes the virus hard to contain.
So movement is actually a big problem in this outbreak, and that people continue to move and continue to expose new populations to the infection.
In late March, Doctors Without Borders warned the Ebola epidemic was out of control. In August, the World Health Organization called it an international public health emergency. Aid finally started arriving. The U.S. military sent nearly 3,000 troops to build treatment centers in Liberia. Other countries and organizations, even individuals, also sent aid. By mid-December, WHO Chief Dr. Margaret Chan said there were signs of hope in some areas, as well as new outbreaks in others, especially in Sierra Leone.
We must maintain our vigilance. Complacency would be our enemy, and in order to get it to zero, we have been successful in bending the curve a bit, but we need to continue to do more to get to zero.
Despite fast-tracking potential Ebola treatments and vaccines, early treatment and basic care remain the best hope for survival. Carol Pearson, VOA News, Washington.
President Barack Obama's decision to ease restrictions on U.S. trade with Cuba is attracting a lot of attention from the business community, with many companies poised to enter the last communist stronghold in the Americas. But longtime Cuban exiles in Miami tell VOA's Sharon Ben that the news is bittersweet for those who had to leave everything behind.
I remember getting out of school and getting to my house and there'd be a seal on the door.
When Jorge Valdez was 8 years old, he and his family left Cuba with nothing but the clothes on their backs.
That's my grandfather right there.
Now, all he has left are some old photographs and a lot of memories.
When I was a kid, my grandfather smoked cigars. We used to sit in the front of the house and he used to sit in a rocking chair and smoke it. I'd hold it. My father and my uncle, while they were playing dominoes, which is another part of being Cuban, is something that we do. We play dominoes, smoke cigars, and roast pigs. It's part of being Cuban. One of my favorites is the Don Carlos.
Today, Valdez owns a successful Miami cigar shop, Sabor Havana, with brands dominated by Cuban families who also fled Cuba and today use other tobacco to make top brand cigars. Valdez says people have been smuggling Cuban cigars into the United States for years. But now, large distributors are planning for when the Cuban market opens up, and Valdez is expecting sales to jump.
I think that when trade opens up with Cuba and we do have Cuban cigars to sell here in the United States, there'll be a surge, of course, because it has been for 50 years, the forbidden fruit. So everybody wants to, take a bite of the forbidden fruit.
Across town in Miami, the stronghold of Cuban Americans, Andy Consuegra says lifting the trade embargo with Cuba would instantly boost his wine and spirit sales in the Caribbean.
Overnight, it's about 4 or 5 million more tourists right overnight, plus the increase in tourists that would be expected should things change or when things change, plus the local populations.
Consuegra says as of now, large European companies dominate the market as they don't fall under the U.S. economic embargo. Businessmen like Consuegra and Valdez look forward to the opportunities that open trade would bring. But for Valdez, it's difficult to forget the past.
That's the bitter part. I wish that, those kind of things could be erased, but there's so much pain for 50 years that we hold on to, that it's hard, to look at the upside of this exchange without there being some benefit to the people that are there.
Valdez says even if he could, he doesn't want to return to the communist nation. He says he's content to spend his time with his friends and clients in his own little bit of Cuba here in Miami. Sharon Bain, VOA News, Miami.
Well, it's time for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. So who will be the next James Bond? If the head of Sony gets her way, the new 007 could surprise you. We'll be right back.
Sani ba na ce na sani suka ce to zaki na ce a'a.
Abdulgafar wala da meji national bureau.
Suka gaya
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Can you see actor Idris Elba as 007? Well, the 42-year-old British actor as James Bond could very well be the dream of many women and has been an idea his fans have supported for years. But it was also the suggestion of Sony Pictures Entertainment co-chairman Amy Pascal. Idris should be the next Bond, she wrote in an email to a former executive at Columbia Pictures. The email, leaked as a part of the ongoing Sony hacking scandal, Elba has stated that he would love to play the role. Fingers crossed. Now, if he does wind up playing Bond, Idris could discover that making it in Hollywood can be both a blessing and a curse. Just ask Adam Sandler. For the second year in a row, Forbes magazine declares Sandler the most overpaid actor in Hollywood, meaning his movies bring in the lowest return on investment. Ouch! And double ouch, given that Sandler was among the stars dissed in leaked emails from the Sony Pictures Entertainment hack. His movies were disparaged for their mundane, formulaic quality. Other stars in the top 10 include Johnny Depp, Ben Stiller, and Oscar winner Tom Hanks. And finally, in a season of sharing and giving, an amazing story of friendship out of India. A monkey was filmed saving its friend's life after the second monkey got electrocuted and fell unconscious on the rail tracks at a train station in the northern Indian city of Kanpur. The unconscious monkey appeared to have been electrocuted from high-tension wires at the train station and was lying motionless. Now, the other monkey then tried to shake him, dip him in water, and even bite him into consciousness. Some minutes later, the unconscious monkey, completely covered in mud, opened its eyes and began moving again. Now, that is devotion. And that is what is trending today. Well, the interview, a comedy film by Sony Pictures about two American journalists assigned by the CIA to assassinate North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, is the latest in a string of Hollywood parodies of foreign leaders. But this is the first time a big Hollywood studio suffered damaging retaliation for its artistic license. At first, suspected North Korean cyber attacks against Sony prompted the company to pull the comedy from its national and international release on Christmas Day. But after critics of Hollywood's self-censorship, Sony announced a Christmas limited release of the movie in the U.S. Now, VOA's Penelope Pulu has more.
You two are going to be in a room alone with Kim.
You want us to kill the leader of North Korea?
Yes.
What?
In Sony's comedy, The Interview, celebrity reporter David Skylark and his producer are recruited by the CIA to assassinate North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
Oh no.
This is the latest of Hollywood's parodies on foreign dictators. Charlie Chaplin's more elegant 1940s satire, The Great Dictator, parodies Adolf Hitler without using his name or the name of his country. In 2004, Paramount Pictures released the satire Team America World Police, parodying former North Korean leader Kim Jong-il, also without using his name.
Ornery, so ornery, so ornery and sad real wrong.
In 2012, comedian Sacha Baron Cohen, known for his artistic brazenness, portrayed a vulgar Middle Eastern dictator, a composite of corrupt leaders from the region.
WTF? What the
But Sony's The Interview is the first American flick where a real-life sitting dictator is targeted for assassination.
Closing in on you.
North Korea called the movie an act of war. Victor Cha of the Center for Strategic and International Studies explains why the film touched a nerve in Pyongyang.
In a sense, it's almost more invasive than Western economic sanctions or military exercises, because they can always rally the people around, Western hostility. But Western ridicule is harder for them to rally their people around because it raises questions about the leadership.
The cyber attack against Sony has rattled Hollywood economically and culturally. Sony pulled the film from the market. Paramount Pictures canceled the re-release of Team America World Police, and New Regency Films canceled the film project on North Korea, set to begin in March with comedian Steve Carell. Hollywood celebrities have criticized Sony's self-censorship. President Obama said that Sony made a mistake in pulling the film.
We cannot have a society in which some dictator someplace can start imposing censorship here in the United States.
Look at this.
Kim Jong-un wants to do an interview with Dave Skylark?
He's a fan!
Some film critics who have seen the comedy haven't been kind either. They describe the film as sophomoric and vulgar, and some have questioned Hollywood's smugness in ridiculing other cultures, especially when those cultures don't get the joke. Victor Cha points to this cultural disconnect.
For them, that's something they're not used to because they portray an image inside their country of how the North Korean leadership, the family, is really the closest thing to God.
Meanwhile, Hollywood's soul-searching on where to draw the line between its artistic freedom of expression and its excessive parodying of other cultures may have just begun. Penelope Pulu, VOA News, Washington.
Good night. That's it.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Talking about food is a favorite topic in the United States. Here is a popular term.
Junk food.
What is junk food? Is it good for you?
I just ate a bag of potato chips, a couple of candy bars, and 2 sodas.
Are you kidding? That's a lot of junk food. I thought you were on a healthy diet.
I am.
Guess not.
The word junk means something that does not have value. It can be thrown away. Junk food is food that's not good for you. It is not the kind of food you want to eat if you are watching your weight or trying to be healthy. But many Americans love junk food. All those crunchy, sweet, and high-calorie items sell well. And that's English in a Minute.